Pardon me if I, Greg Ron, and he's from UNDP. Yes, oh, you're here, please.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Armen. I work for United Nations Development Program, and me and my co-presenter, Mr. Savrasov, who represents the private sector, Phoenix Sea Retro insurance-linked security company. We will be speaking about something very important. It's about disasters, but it's even more important. It's about money. Money is essential and critical not only to prepare, but also to respond and recover. And with the SDGs, it's now been clear that without participation, financial participation from private sector, SDGs will not be achieved. In the Sendai framework, the priority area number 3 also speaks about investing for resilience, as well as we have a reference to investing for resilience. Okay, the digest. Okay. We have a reference to resilience in investing for resilience in the Paris Agreement. In 2018, Munich Re, which is a reinsurance company, the National Catastrophic Service, registered 850 events, disaster events, with total economic loss of 160 billion. 1 year, 160 billion. Disaster financing ensures financial resilience and protects businesses and private sector from economic damage from disasters. I have some data here that every year disasters pull back to poverty approximately 25 to 30 million people globally. So every year we go back 25, 30 million into poverty, and then we start putting money into poverty eradication. UNDP partnered with a whole range of institutions starting last year, including private sector like Phoenix Sea Retro. We have UNDRR, Asian Development Bank, JICA, Swiss Re, and the list is really very long. On trying to identify what are the best ways, or what is the set of the ways that we can achieve financial resilience to disasters, and what can be done in order to make money available to the governments immediately, because normally what happens after the disasters, the governments start to look for money, and they do the flash appeal, and then they do resource mobilization, etc., etc. By the time you get all the money, it's been 2 years since the disaster. Climate and disaster risks are threatening achievements in poverty reduction, and losses accounting for impact on well-being are accounted for over 500 billion every year. When we have the last year's loss 160 million, the annual loss the average loss in the last 10 years, more than 200 billion, and we have the losses for well-being for more than 500 billion. We will be presenting several ways of how we think this can be made possible. One of the ways is the catastrophe bonds, and the other one is parametric insurance. But of course, it's only a segment, a fragment, several ways of many other ways that this can be done. For a more technical intervention, I would like to invite my co-facilitator, Mr. Savrasov, who is the Chief Executive of Phoenix Sea Retro insurance-linked company. Please.
Many thanks, Armen. Many thanks for the opportunity to speak at such an important event, and especially having such a well-established and well-known organization as UNDP in the form of potential partnership. When it comes to disaster risk reduction, many international organizations dealing only within 2 major key points. One is increasing resilience, technical resilience, and another one is definitely dealing with the consequences of the event as such, which is disaster relief. However, private sector have experience and have established instruments which can stand before disaster happens and help for international organizations and for those countries which suffered to get a good, steady finance. When it comes to instrument as such, and as my colleague mentioned, there are two key instruments which is currently used by now more than a dozen of countries with the help of international financial institutions and with the help of international agencies. One is parametric insurance or reinsurance solutions, which is much more developed by global insurance industry, and another one is so-called ILS risk transfer instruments, which is insurance-linked securities risk transfer instruments, mainly known in the form of catastrophic bonds, and they also use parametric triggers, so it's not too much different from parametric solutions. However, presuming that investors into ILS are predominantly asset managers, pension funds, and general market money investors who are looking for some alternatives, and they really like this type of instrument because this is probably one of a very few investment asset classes which is totally uncorrelated with general economic cycles, which means that nothing apart of catastrophe can influence the pricing and the return for investors as such. So that is why having international agencies, having professionals on the market who can provide innovative instrument, although with many countries already got a payout, I wouldn't even name them now as innovative, it's more like becoming a standard, and having pure private market money investors, it creates an ideal, we call it within the industry convergence, but there is synergy where each and every participant of this chain can bring quite a lot of added value, especially when it comes to pushing these instruments onto the territories. We particularly started this endeavor for the countries of ICIS region, which is Central Asia, countries of the former Soviet Union. And I think that in that region we have the same problem which exists in other parts of the world. First one is very low insurance penetration, and those figures which are reported on the global scale, they are not reflecting the real sadness of this situation with insurance penetration. I can give you a wonderful example. Classical data from Swiss Re, from Munich Re, is that only 9% of losses from national disasters are covered in Asian countries. Actually, it is not. Vast majority of former Soviet Union countries have insurance penetration less than 1.5%. And such a large figure exists for Asia because we've got Japan, we've got other developed countries. So in order to see how big is that problem, you need to work in that region. Another point is some local peculiarities which can be overcome only with the weight and with the opportunities of international organizations. A very good example, insurance or reinsurance protectionism, where local companies a little bit limited for the general transition of the know-how and for the general proper development of parametric instruments. Another very good point where such cooperation can be very fruitful is involvement of international financial organizations and development banks who are really concerned about what's happening if tomorrow large earthquake strikes. They better pre-finance this activity or help to implement such an instrument as ILS or cat bonds in order to basically to recover less as a direct help. So all these together creates quite a unique synergy, as I mentioned, and as a representative of private sector, I can say that cooperation with international agencies and international financial institutions are the key which could help to implement these instruments which took decades for other parts of the world, but now with involvement of such partners in different territories, these instruments can be implicated much faster than it took colleagues from other areas. So, any questions?
Thank you very much. If there are no questions, we will leave our business cards in case there is a need to follow up with us. Thank you.